Hello, boxing fans. This is Kenny Bayless sitting here with me, my co-host, Robert Burton. We got a very special guest that is here on the show. This love, I'm just tingling the fact that he's here because I've met D-Smoke for the first time after the Pacquiao fight. Welcome to the show, D-Smoke.
Thank you for having me, Kenny. I'm a huge boxing fan, retired amateur boxer, and
Look out!
I'm super excited to speak to the sport and speak with you, man. I'm no stranger to your legacy in the sport, so thank y'all for having me.
Thank you. When we spoke that night, there was a buzz in the air after the Pacquiao fight because the fight ended up a draw.
Yeah.
And we talked about it, and it was when you told me that you were a boxing fan and you followed us over the years, and you had your opinion as to who you. Well, just give us your opinion on the fight for the fans.
Yeah, I thought Pacquiao won initially, and I still think he did enough to get a victory. Having watched it back, I don't necessarily disagree with the judge's decision. Part of what makes it difficult, it's not just CompuBox, it's not just number of punches landed. When you take into consideration of all the ring generalship and effective aggression and all those things, an argument can be made that Barios was landing bigger shots and more decisive shots versus Pacquiao's. His level of activity could have edged the scoring in his favor. So I'm not mad at the draw, but again, if one person had to win and a draw wasn't an option, I would have favored Pacquiao personally. So and correct me if I'm wrong, it was a majority draw, wasn't it?
Yes.
And was it a majority draw in Pacquiao, one of the judges having it for Pacquiao, or the other way around?
Well, two of the judges had it a draw.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other judge had it for
Barios.
Barios, yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
which that part, that was the insult to injury part for me, because I was like, it's a majority draw and neither of them had it for Pacquiao. That was interesting.
Yeah.
But hey. But again, and from the stadium, it's interesting because from like floor seats, you can see the activity, and sometimes that the camera angle tells a better story of the impact of those punches. So I think Mario Barios did have some really good punches landed. But again, I think it was a good Pacquiao fight.
Very well said. What you have said to me, being the fact that you was in the amateur program, you have a little knowledge of the sport.
Absolutely.
So that was very well spoken.
Yeah, very well spoken. And the thing about it is that the one thing when you're at ringside, and from our perspective, probably is the best. On TV, you can't hear the ooh or see the referee. You're 18, 20 inches away. You can see those things, and those things make the difference.
Absolutely.
They definitely can make a difference. When you hear that ooh, that punch landed.
Right.
And
you
see that,
you hear that as well, no?
Yeah, and when you see that sweat pop off his head, that punch landed.
Or blood.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So all of those things do make a difference. I have a fight, and when you have a fight that's that close, and the judges, they're looking at it from the minute that round starts and the minute that round ends. And sometimes the with two things. They're looking at it with their heart and with their pocketbook. And the judges sitting ringside, they can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, right. The fans we're looking at it based on what we bet too.
Well, yeah, that's it. So, yeah.
And I've often said a close that fight, and it was close.
Mhm. Yeah.
For me, you can almost flip a coin, and heads if it lands is Pacquiao, and tail if it lands is Barios. It was a close fight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was very
Right.
close.
I mean,
fight.
it's difficult because there are some fights I watch, and I wish that there was an additional score after the whole fight is over. That's not per round. That is legal. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, after we've scored it 10-9, 10-9, whatever, 10-8, if there's a knockdown, then there's an overall score that you're like, this is how I feel about, like you have these categories: ring generalship and effective aggression, and I forget the third one, but they're still supposed to be applied per round, and each round is submitted, correct?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
then there's also this additional element to me in boxing, that's over the course of the fight, what do you feel happened, right? And I think if we somehow quantify that, it might prevent us from having decisions that are just so mechanical in a sense. Like, for example, like there are fights where if you look at it round for round, you have a bunch of 10-9 rounds, right? But then you have one fighter, his 10-9 rounds are so much more decisive than the other fighter's 10-9 rounds. And you can't quantify that by turning in the scores per round, right? Where in those kind of fights, for example, you know, for example, let's say Devin Haney and Lomachenko.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can make an argument that Haney won a lot of those early rounds and maybe inched out some of the later rounds, and you're scoring it per round. But there were middle rounds where Lomachenko took him to school, completely dominated. And those are very different rounds from these rounds where it's like, by boxing prowess and intelligence, you pull off more points alone and not really deliver a degree of fight and intensity that your opponent does for those rounds. So
You know something, D?
Mhm.
You know something? What you're saying, there's a move. There's a move in that direction. I think it's being championed by Mauricio Suleiman, WBC. And they're talking about right now, judges, when they go to a judging seminar, when they score a round, they do exactly what it is you're talking about. There's a 10-9 round, but was it 10-9 close, 10-9 moderate, was it 10-9 decisive? And there's been talk years past about a half-point must system, was it 10-point and a half? And so one of the things that you bring up, that's really being talked about now. They're talking about how can we better quantify what is going on in the ring.
Yeah.
And the close, moderate, decisive, extreme decisive.
Yeah.
But the judges are taught that when they look at the fight, but it doesn't have any effect on the outcome of the fight. Okay, so what you're talking about is that last quality, okay, being added on, and I don't know, it may be, but it's certainly being looked at.
Yeah,
right.
And 20,
it's almost like, yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's almost like the who won the fight score. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it was a street fight, it wouldn't be. There's still an overall like, yeah, but you got whooped. You know what I'm saying? And if you got destroyed in round 6 and 7, and but never touched the canvas, right? And you can score at 10-8 without a knockdown, right? It just has to be a complete.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Right.
Yes, you can.
But they rarely do, though.
True that.
They rarely do, right? So, because I've seen destructive rounds where they didn't call it 10-8 just because they wanted it to be an actual knockdown.
Yeah.
Or 10-7, like, just completely lopsided. I think that if they redefined what a 10-8 round is, you know, or just loosen that scale up, you know, then it could be more fair, you know, in the sense that it was a dominant round versus a one round. Because 10-9, when it starts to add up, it just oftentimes that should be reserved for very close rounds because it's a very close score.
Well, I can tell you that what you're talking about is trending in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously got to be talked about. All of the major organizations have to, you know, kind of get their heads and wrap themselves around it. Now with the Sheikh and Dana coming in and what they're talking about, all that's going to really have to be talked about. But the point that you make is a very valid point, that everything evolves. And so that's a part of the evolution of the sport, and hopefully, you know, it'll move more in the direction that you're talking about.
And like Bird said about our seminars, because every year officials have to attend seminars, have to get relicensed, and you know, years ago, when you talk about how the sport is changing and how you try to work on making it better, there was talk years ago about if a fight ended up a draw, what would be the likelihood of having them fight another round?
Which they did. They did that.
I remember.
They did that. They did that in kickboxing.
Yes.
Yeah, they did that.
Yes.
You fought that extra round.
Yeah.
I don't know that's going to sail because and there's an argument now that, you know, they should cut it even more. But that was one of the arguments about safety. And that's the reason why we went from 15 rounds to 12 rounds.
Yeah.
Because most of the damage was being done in that 13, 14, 15 round. So then they brought it down to 12 to make it a little bit safer. So,
yeah.
But, you know, if you don't evolve, if you're standing still, you know, it's not a good thing. So at least it's trending in that direction.
Yeah.
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 And
go ahead.
I want to ask you a question, because you're really out there in the music area. So what parallels do you see or feel between boxing and music, i.e. the preparation necessary to enhance the potential for success?
Absolutely. One of my favorite books is Will Smith's book, Will. And he talks about when he played the role for Muhammad Ali, they brought on, I want to say a guy named Derek, but he was a amateur national champion, and he had hit somebody after the bell and got disqualified. And so it really adversely affected his professional career, but he ended up being the person they called to get these actors ready for boxing roles. And Ali was at a very pivotal point in Will Smith's career, in that after Ali, I think we got, you know, we got I Am Legend, and we got Hitch, we got all these different, like, you know, I Robot, these major blockbuster films. But per Will Smith's testimony, it was when he took the training camp mentality into how he managed his team, like, and how he managed his life, really. It was one of the main determining factors in him being able to continue to meet this demand of him being like one of the biggest movie stars ever, and managing a family, managing his teams, and showing up and meeting that demand. And so for me, for example, I just did a freestyle on Just Incredible's show from Power 106, one of the top radio, you know, shows in the nation. And it went, you know, it went beautifully. Everybody's like, well, Smoke is back and all this stuff, you know, because I've, you know, taken a break to go into acting. I'm on a show called Mayor of Kingstown right now on Paramount Plus. But what people see is they see that moment, right? But they don't see the preparation. Similar to like boxing, you know, if you are a fan of boxing long enough, you will see one of your favorite fighters show up in the ring, more than likely a shell of themselves, because what we actually get is the degree of the fight is parallel to the um the amount of preparation that went into it, whatever type of training camp they went into, what mindset they're in, who they surround themselves by. And so for me in music, it's the same thing. Like the best, the highest energy that can enter the room is an authentic energy, and you can't fake your training camp, so to speak, whether it's from a boxing standpoint or from an artist standpoint. So for me, when I step up to rap, and I know I've been in the gym every day, and I know
Yeah.
I know I've gotten good rest, and I know I've been eating according to, what I know is best for, my health. I know I've been surrounding myself with people who are honest with me, and if I'm wrong, they'll hold me accountable. If my weeks prior to stepping outside have felt like that, then I move with a different level of intensity, which people can feel, and intention and authenticity. And so, boxing, like, it's, some people come out of the streets and they're like, I used to be a drug dealer and I got shot and now I'm rapping, and you can feel the hardship of their experience in their music and in their presence. Well, I come from a really good family. As a black man, I enjoy a certain level of privilege just because I had both parents in the home, which isn't always the case for us, unfortunately. Um, but so my intensity, I think, comes from my adherence to that strict schedule, as much as possible. That includes eating well, training, being creative a certain amount. It might be engaging in nature, getting outside. We saw during some of Mayweather's fights, in addition to all the wear and tear, he was like, I'm doing yoga, I'm doing cryotherapy. So it's that balance that allows you to show up with that supreme confidence, because similar to boxing, we're not in this arena by ourselves. It's other rappers out there, and
Yeah.
and the audience is comparative, regardless of how we feel. True, my art might be unique, and whatever I bring is something special to me. But rap is not something that people view as they don't think there's space for everybody. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the audience is one that assumes, like, okay, whose spot are you taking? Why should I listen to you? Even and beyond the music being good, beyond the lyrics being good, why? What about you as a person? And that's why we get some of those stories where it's like, we got these rappers been through who have beat crazy odds in their in their own life, you know.
Right.
So, but for me, it's training camp at all times, just because I believe life is a fight in and of itself. I grew up in Inglewood, you know what I'm saying? So,
I was right next door to you.
hey, there we go. And I'm talking about before boxing, it was fighting. My pops was locked up. So, and those are my favorite fighters to train. Like, because I'm training now. I'm about to be 40, so I'm making my transition to holding the mitts. But
Right.
my favorite fighters to train are the ones that know that part of themselves that's like a little bit dangerous and troubled, and then you can harness that energy, versus somebody who you have to teach.
I know that a part of your training camp back when you were growing up had a lot to do with your mom, because
Yes,
I believe your mom was the main figure in helping you get started and getting you where you are today. Could you expound on that?
absolutely. I can't say enough about how fortunate I am to have had my mom as my mom. Um, just one of the most incredible talents. She was a professional long before it came time to hit the stage. Like, she was diligent about practice, whether it be piano, whether it be vocal lessons. Um, and she was a minister of music at my church. So, um, part of how I view music comes from her. Um, her her favorite artist was Stevie Wonder, and so when it comes to how I view music, what makes music, I believe part of that is the impact it has on people. It's one of our biggest tools in creating culture, creating legacy, teaching people without feeling preachy, and so what I view as a complete album for myself is heavily influenced by the music that she introduced to us in the home, and how she lived her life. She was a minister of music, so it was always a tool to help impact others. So that's a big part of my movement. Even though I'm rapping and I'm telling these kind of hood, sometimes intense stories, by the time you finish an album, there has to be that level of spirituality. There has to be honesty, and there has to be a certain amount of heart in there that makes it special, and makes it more like having read a book than having watched a movie. You know what I'm saying?
You know what? I want to compliment you. I want to compliment you on the tremendous discipline that it takes to master not only a musical instrument, which you have done, another language, which you've done, and blend two cultures
Yes.
together with great success. I got to compliment you on that.
I appreciate that.
That takes a lot of discipline. Concert pianist, mastered another language.
Yes, sir.
And blended those two, and it's evident when I listen to a couple of your songs. You go from English into Spanish, and it takes a tremendous amount of discipline to do both of those things.
Yes,
but
sir.
to blend them together, you'd be complimented.
Thank you. When you grew up around such greats, like my mother was incredible. My uncle is incredible. He played bass for Shaka Khan for years. He was her energy.
Wow.
He played for Prince for years. He's played with everybody. And just I had big shoes to fill, and they supported us enough to where we could develop those skills, but still gave us enough room to, find our own identity as artists, as people. And so in good time, and that's how, and I say we because my brother Sir is an incredible artist. He's signed to TDE and just headlined, Hollywood Bowl, and we both performed at the Bowl this year. So
Congrats.
That's that environment. The environment I grew up in is something I try to recreate in different spaces, just so that there can be that level of growth for other people. I actually am one of the owners of Broadway Boxing Gym in Los Angeles.
108th and Broadway.
108th and Broadway, yeah. So rest in peace to Miss Larkins. Rest in peace to Miss Larkins, her son Raphael. I trained out of there and fought out of. That's where I met, Sam Watson, and one time he brought Chris Eubank Sr. in, and he's a English fighter, and so a lot of the people didn't know who he was, but when they walked in, I was like, oh shoot, I know who Eubank is, because I'm a student of the game. So I think that more than anything, and I was announcing the fights in English and Spanish, and so before Sam knew I was into music, he gave me his contact information. This back when I was fighting, and was like, hey, just hit me every week. He didn't have any real reason, but he just saw something in me. And then turns out, at the time I wanted to go pro, but turns out, all of that panned out a different way, and we stayed in contact. But Broadway Boxing Gym is something that's super important to me. So, maybe at a later date we'll have the discussion about how we can bring some energy, over there. But and of course you're familiar with it. I used to train with Papa Bear there, and different people in there. So really, I really put together a skill set in there. So when y'all see me spar, one of these days we could take the show to a boxing gym, and I'll move around with some of the pros so y'all can see I know what I'm doing.
And tiptoe up them stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
No,
sir.
no, please smoke. I have to touch on this subject because I'm a retired school teacher, taught here in the Clark County School District for 35 years. You were a teacher as well,
Mhm.
and share with us the years that you were a teacher prior to stepping and going the music route and becoming a rapper.
Well, it wasn't quite prior to. So me and my brothers were signed as young kids to DreamWorks under a guy named Gerald Busby, who was instrumental uh, in Boys to Men becoming who they were. So as early as 10, 11,
Okay,
and 12, we were going
right.
to be a singing group. And then at 17 or 18, I get signed again to a publishing company, Warner Chappell. So I'm writing songs for other people. And I didn't start teaching until I was about 23. And that was after directing an outreach program at UCLA,
Yeah.
so it was always music because come from a musical family, but teaching was the thing that the roller coaster of a music career. I'm an independent person, right? So sure, one day you might get a $25,000 check, and then 3 months later you get a $15,000 check. But when that money hits as a 19-year-old kid, chances are you spending 15 real quick,
Yeah.
and so me wanting to just have a consistent income and already having fallen in love with education and helping people, it was a no-brainer to go into the classroom. And I was being bilingual. I was always invited to teach, even without a credential. They would figure out like, hey, we can get you this emergency credential, we can get you this substitute permit, and you'd be a long-term sub, but you'd be teaching like
Right.
in our neighborhoods. There's such a demand for black male teachers, especially
Yes.
in the world of foreign language, that there was always somebody offering me a job. So
Yeah.
it was kind of by fate and God's plan, that I kept being offered these jobs, and it just kept me able to be independent and have my own space and grow into myself versus the typical artist plight, which a lot of times has to do with going broke, sleeping on somebody's couch, looking for somebody to fund your movement. Mine was, it was like I'm shooting music videos off of a teacher's uh dispensable income, you know what I'm saying, which is
Mhm.
might be $1,000 a month, but I'm
Right.
figuring out how to put it together.
Yeah. Yeah, when Mayweather, I've done quite a few of his fights, but when he used to come into the ring and all the build up before the fight, rappers were starting to appear as
Hmm.
he, coming from his dressing room into the ring, and it's kind of fell off. Do you think that will pick back up again, where the rappers will be a little bit more involved in the sport of boxing?
I think rappers, they do. Errol Spence tends to have rappers walk him out. Eminem walked,
Yeah.
Terrence Crawford out. I've walked Deontay Wilder out. I've
Oh
also
yeah.
walked Caleb Plant out. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh
it's
yeah.
still there. Um, yeah, it's still there, but I just think, or Gervonta Davis has had somebody from Baltimore walk him out. I don't know that it's as common, but there's a very beautiful relationship between musicians and fighters.
Yeah.
Just because I think musicians have a lot of times, especially in rap, there we have a fight of our own, whether it's literal fighting or in the streets and or whatever our journey is that gets there, and it makes us identify with fighters in a certain way. And vice
Mhm.
versa, Deontay Wilder has released some music, and you know, the famous one, y'all must have forgot, Roy Jones and all these
Mhm.
different fighters who
Yeah.
have dabbled in the music. Even Shaquille O'Neal has dabbled in the music, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to this. It's been said that music attracts you,
Hmm.
but it's the words that grab you
Right.
and sometimes don't let go.
Hmm.
Your feelings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, musicians, 9 times out of 10, the technical aspect is what we get good at, right? We get good at putting it together. But I got to a point where it's like, okay, because I know I can technically do things rhythmically that are going to catch people's attention. I can put words together to grab your ear. Because I know I can do that, I try not to start with that in terms of my process in creating. I try to start with, what do I want to say, and how clearly can I define that, and then the how is what makes it art. Like, okay, now that I know what I want to say, let me put it together in a way that's so undeniable that even somebody who disagrees with me would have to listen, have to pay attention to it. But yeah, it's super important to determine that, just so that, because I'm still an independent artist, so a lot of times artists get away with so much stuff because they have a machine behind it,
Right.
but as any artist, the most powerful thing we have is word of mouth, and when you really impact people, then you
Yeah.
activate something that causes them to start to talk to other people, to the point where people start to feel left out if they don't know, because it's that impactful and powerful. And that's what I aim to do in my music. And I believe once this album comes out, on August 26th, that it'll have that impact. And some of the moments that we've been posting, starting, because our rollout started in early July, they're starting to catch on now, where people are like, oh, I see what's happening.
Well, we know that you were in the amateurs. That's how you got started. But
Mhm.
what first tweaked you in the sport of boxing? Was it a fight card that you went to at a young age, or for me it was watching Muhammad Ali for the first time when I first moved to Las Vegas fight a guy by the name of Joe Bugner. That did it. I
Mhm.
was hooked after that. What hooked you?
I'll take you back through the history, because my first memory, and I wouldn't say I was all the way hooked, but I remember Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson as a kid, and and coming from a Christian household, all my family are
Yeah,
ministers. They're like, holy, holy, Holyfield. You know what I'm saying? So we were at home and they were going. It was just that kind of event where I was a kid and all of the adults were so into it, because from their
yeah.
standpoint, it was like Christianity versus the Nation of Islam. You know what I'm saying? So, but it was a spiritual battle, but to me, it was like, oh, this is a fight. I knew what a fight was already, because with my dad being locked up, I fought a lot in school. Um, so that was a fact. Just it becoming an event for the entire family was something
Yeah,
that was like, oh, this is big. And in a
yeah,
way that's like basketball, you could sit down with a beer and a meal and enjoy a basketball game, but it doesn't necessarily stop life. Some people are running around the house and other people are studying and stuff, but boxing stopped everything. And then when I
Yeah.
got into it for myself, it was Roy Jones Jr., watching his fights. Um, Coming up, and the he was, to me, the Michael Jordan of boxing, because it was both skill and talent that you just can't, like a generational talent, that you can't recreate, and then, so watching him fight, um I don't know which one fight I watched, but I remember him fighting even John Ruiz when he went up to heavyweight,
Everywhere.
and
Yeah.
and his ability to maintain his speed at that weight and
yeah.
outclass him, was phenomenal. And then I feel like most of what I caught, just because I wasn't buying pay per view, or maybe catching the fights at home, most of it was after the fights when I started seeing the highlights, and
Hmm.
studying his highlights. But Mayweather, the next fight that I remember being a huge family thing where everybody got together was and Mayweather and Ricky Hatton, which is to
Yeah.
date one of my favorite fights. Is such a
Yeah.
great styles matchup. When you want a good fight,
Yeah.
you got somebody that's the aggressor and somebody that's the tactician, both
Hmm.
in brilliant shape. you know, at the peaks of their careers, you know. So, and it ended in a knockout. Like, you couldn't ask for a better fight. It was rough, you know, tactical and all the things. So, those things super impact me. And I'm a southpaw, so then I got to follow, you know, once I hit 16 or so, I followed everything, you know. And even now, I pride myself in watching the younger boxers as they come up and start to make a name, you know, Abdullah Masons and the Shakur Stevensons or the, you know, well, Shakur's a little bit further along, Abdullah Mason, and who's another one that
what about Emilio Vargas?
Emilio Vargas is incredible.
Yeah,
that boy bad. That boy sharp. He just got, what was that, a first round knockout?
Yep, 42 seconds.
Yep. And I'm talking about a different type of sharp too. Like, watch out. Like, and he's athletic like we're not used to seeing from like Mexican fighters. You know, he's so swift. And he's got that fast twitch kind of style where it's like he'll punish you for the slightest lag, you know. So yeah, Emilio Vargas is great. You know, and I like Floyd Schofield too, you know. And I think there's a beautiful story there, given that they had to pull out from the Shakur fight and people are accusing him of ducking, and then he comes and gets a knockout against an opponent who is like, you know, reputable. What's his name?
Kevin Farmer?
Kevin Farmer, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So Farmer, you know, has a great style. I think even with his defense, I think Farmer it's interesting. Like, in the pocket, he can move a lot, but his style doesn't keep him out of these rough fights. And within his fights, he ends up getting in moments where it's like, even though he's got a good defense, it turns into a slugfest at some point or other. So,
well,
you got it. You got it.
We got a big one coming up next month. I know you've been hearing all the buzz. It's been buzz ever since they announced it.
Yeah.
And that's Crawford and Canelo.
Yes.
What is your prediction?
Well, one thing I know is going to happen. That Crawford has no retreat in him. You can hit him, you can hurt him even, and it's only going to make him fight harder and better. So that makes for a very interesting fight. I think Canelo will still come forward. I think Crawford is a better fighter going backwards and just as skilled going forward. So either direction, Crawford, he stands to put his hands on Canelo in a way that we're not used to seeing, in a way that Canelo was able to take Jermell Charlo out of his game because Jermell is used to being more aggressive. He's not a back foot fighter in the way that we've seen Crawford step back and counter. Canelo, of course, is dangerous and super skillful. I think Canelo, his defense works well against people who have a more traditional offense. I think because Crawford is excellent at several things, punching while the other person is punching and being far enough off the line to catch his opponent while they're supposed to be offensive. He's really good at guarding and defending while he's being offensive. And he's good at setting up his shots and using his feints to create openings. So I think Crawford I think he's the most brilliant offensive fighter in the sport. We saw, and I told people he was going to destroy Spence. They didn't believe me. Spence didn't have anything for Crawford, you know, and Spence got all the arsenal in the world against other opponents, you know. And so, but when you're with somebody whose fight IQ and their ability to adjust is that high, it's different, you know. What we forget is that although we've seen Crawford hurt before, he was hurt. Mean Machine probably hurt him the worst. Some people say he dropped him, depending on how you call it. The ref didn't call it. But at welterweight, we didn't see Errol hurt Crawford. I I think as that weight goes on, some things, as you put more weight on and go up in weight classes, some things move up with you or even improve. Crawford's knockout percentage, some people, like, for example, you had when Adrian Broner went up to welterweight, he stopped knocking people out. That was above his power, level. Whereas Crawford, as he goes up, I think his chin gets better, at least from junior welterweight to welterweight, his knockout percentage got better. So there's a certain level of power he's carrying up, and there's a certain level of durability he's carrying up. He walked to Spence in a way that we hadn't seen people do that, and I think for this fight, there's a lot of, like, he has the ability to thread the needle in the sense that he's safer on the inside if he's physical with Canelo in a way that Canelo's not used to. Like, even if it's not in the sense of like bang the guard, but actually like bump him, push him so that Canelo can feel Crawford's physical strength, in the way that when we say you watch the Jeff Horn fight, that was Crawford's first fight at welterweight. Jeff Horn manhandled Pacquiao in the ring, and not, some people think he didn't win because Pacquiao landed some really clean shots, but physically, Jeff Horn was supposed to bully Crawford, and Crawford's background in wrestling makes it so that if he can make his opponent uncomfortable just by being comfortable, closer, and more physical.
Yeah, I did that fight.
You did that fight?
I did Crawford and Horn. I did that fight.
And I've seen that fight so many times. And that fight is the equivalent of Mayweather and Hatton, in my opinion. You got one guy who's being an aggressor, but he's just running into bricks every time, So, so Crawford has some real tools. Again, Canelo is great. He's literally a phenomenal fighter, world class, a generational fighter even. I think Crawford's a better fighter. But he hasn't spent that time at the weight. So that's just what we have to see. If Crawford never touches the canvas, Crawford stands to get either a draw or a victory. Like, I don't see Crawford never, if Canelo don't knock him down, it's either a draw or a Crawford win. Canelo has to me, the onus is on Canelo to hurt him or stop him.
The key, D-Smoke, to me, for both fighters is adversity.
Yeah.
How are you going to deal with something that you never dealt before? Like you said, getting knocked down, walking back to your corner, a little buzz from the shots that you took, and how well you can recover from it before that bell ring, because you got to go right back out there and deal with your opponent. And being a boxer like yourself, I know you got some things to say on that.
Well, I'm still active, so I don't make any predictions. But what I will say is this: styles make fights, and I think that fights are won not above the waist. Fights are won below the waist, and I think that Crawford has excellent footwork.
Yeah,
and I think footwork is going to be the key in this fight, because if you can, your legs and your feet get you in position to do what it is you want to do, and the person that can do that the best, I think, is going to be the person that comes out victorious.
Very well said. Very well said. And the other thing that I always mention is what you got in your toolbox and how you use your toolbox will say a whole lot depending upon how things are going, if in your favor or not in your favor. How are you going to use your toolbox to get you, if you're in trouble, out of trouble?
Yeah.
All those little key things makes a difference.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge Crawford fan, so of course I'm trying to think my way through how he can do it. But
Yeah.
you know, if I had if with my IQ and a clear power advantage or natural physical power advantage over somebody, you know, I would have strategies on how to go about, you know, trying to break down that person. Like, I hope Canelo don't see this before before the fight, but you know, I would one jab to the center of mass, like behind a feint, then jab to the center of mass, just like disruptive punches that can't miss. You know, not even worry about trying to land shots yet, just disrupt the rhythm, jabbing at shoulders and all that stuff so that I can push my opponent into position to where if I have to get offensive, now I have them with their back against the rope somewhere and I can bang the guard with combos, you know, and find the holes. But from the center of the ring, I wouldn't play the game of trying to counterpunch him or outsmart them there, because I think that's where Crawford has his advantage. I would just anytime Crawford looks like he's about to throw, I would double jab toward chest, you know, sternum, just so even if he slips, is catching something and throwing off his rhythm, forcing him to reset or back up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
so
The,
Yeah, we're getting ready to close out. Your final thoughts, Bert.
well, I know that you've accomplished a lot.
mhm.
So often when a person becomes successful, they don't reach a hand down to lift others up. Not so much with you. Why is that?
My success can be heavily attributed to the people that put me in position and helped me. My uncle, when I was 13, he dropped a whole studio worth of equipment off at my house and plugged it all up and got us started, you know. My mom supported everything that we wanted to do, from boxing to martial arts, everything except football, you know. Um, and then I had mentors, you know, a guy named Julian Gordon when I went to UCLA, who introduced me to the education world. And, you know, they're key people. And even now, the team I surround myself with, in so many ways, they're willing me through this next phase of my artistry and releases.
I was going to say, what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I have an album coming out August 26th, and it's called Wake Up Super. And it's a beautiful body of work. I'm super proud of it. And then I'm touring in the fall. In the fall, I start with Vancouver on October 28th. And then I don't come back home till November 24th, after hitting about 18 cities.
Super.
Well, all we can say is thank God you came on to the podcast. We really appreciate that. But
Absolute pleasure.
Kenny and I both wish you nothing but continued success. We need models, role models out there like you. So just continue down the path that you're on now, because it's a good road.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that.
And I ditto what Bert just said, and I would just like to say we appreciate you coming on the show, to the official call, and hopefully we'll get you back at another time.
Man, fellas, it's been my absolute pleasure, man. I'll see y'all in Vegas soon. You know, I'm always at the fights, and I appreciate y'all having me, man. I love the sport, and I love what I do. So, you know, y'all gonna be seeing more of me.